When I tell people that I left my software engineering job at Amazon to go to grad school, I usually get one of two reactions. The first reaction is that the person I'm talking to knows somebody who worked at Amazon and had a bad experience, and they'll say, "Oh, I totally understand why you would want to leave." The second reaction I get is kind of this look of shock and horror, and then the inevitable question of, but why would you want to leave all that money on the table? And are you sure you're not making a mistake? Leaving a six-figure job at Amazon was one of the hardest decisions I've had to make. Today, I'm sharing exactly why I did it. If you want to know whether or not I regret it, stick around to the end of this video because I'm going to talk about that too. So I signed the offer with Amazon and put in my notice at my previous company. When I interviewed at Amazon, I interviewed with a manager that I really liked. She was clearly very knowledgeable. She had a long technical background. During the interview process, when I was working with her, she was really good at coaching through the problem as we were talking through it. And I just got a really good feeling that she would be able to represent me really well. She would be able to help me grow in my career since I was still pretty junior. And I really wanted to have the support of a manager like that. I was super excited to be joining this team with a bunch of really experienced engineers, people who had pretty impressive backgrounds and a lot to offer. And because it was a relatively new service that I would be joining, there was also lots of work to do. And they talked about how many different opportunities there were to develop new systems, and I was really excited because my goal at that point was to work on larger systems than I had worked in my previous role and to get exposed to cloud services and do more large-scale distributed system design. So I was pumped to start, and it absolutely felt like the right career move for me at the time. But on my first day, I found out that the manager I had interviewed with had left for a different opportunity 2 weeks prior to my joining. And I had an interim manager who would be, helping me get started. And then they were going to be basically scrambling to find a new manager for our team. Things didn't improve too much from there. I learned a very valuable lesson here, which is that you should always, always, always ask the team that you are interviewing with what their turnover looks like. Find out how many people have left the organization, have left your team within that organization within the last year or within the last 6 months. Honestly, both might be helpful. I think that has to be the single most important question you should ask if you're interviewing at Amazon, is find out what the attrition looks like, because I have never seen turnover like this before. People came and went at a shocking pace. It made it really difficult to form bonds with people on the team in any meaningful way, because you were just expecting that they would be gone in 6 months, or that you might be gone in 6 months. It's hard to form working relationships on that kind of timeline. It was wild. The entire experience at Amazon was a real mixed bag for me. On the one hand, there were things I really liked about it. Some people might think it's kind of rude, but I actually liked how Amazon respected meeting times. If you scheduled a meeting, literally at the moment that the meeting time ended, people would just drop off the call immediately. And if you needed to schedule a follow-up meeting, you were expected to schedule a follow-up meeting. I actually liked that a lot, because for me, it's really frustrating when I get into a meeting with somebody and they are just rambling on and on and on with no scheduled agenda. And you leave this meeting feeling like you've just wasted 90 minutes of your day, but you don't have any good takeaways from it. In my opinion, it's disrespectful of people's time to not bring them a clear agenda and a reason for why you scheduled this meeting, and then to try to make it pretty focused around that agenda that you brought forward. It's just a way to show that you respect people's time. I really appreciated the expediency of the meeting culture at Amazon, and I felt like everyone was saying that your time is valuable and we should be on topic and really focused on getting usefulness out of this meeting that we have called. I really liked that. I also loved that no one seemed to care about pedigree. I guess what I mean by that is I never got the feeling that I was going to be excluded from working on something because I didn't have the right background for it. I did take a non-traditional path to get into engineering, and so sometimes I do have a chip on my shoulder, or just a little imposter syndrome that kicks in and is like, do you even belong here? So it was actually really nice that no one in Amazon seemed to really care that much about my background. People defaulted to believing in you that you were capable of doing something, and that if you wanted to do it, that you should do it. And that's in contrast with some places where people will look at your background skills and say, oh, you don't have what we're looking for, and we're gonna go with this other person who knows like 6 tech stacks that, you don't know. I never encountered that at Amazon. In fact, it was the opposite. It was like, if you are interested in this, then you should definitely work on it. To me, that was really refreshing, and it made me feel very included in the engineering culture in a way that I did not expect given Amazon's reputation. The other thing I really liked was the writing culture, and I know that it drives some people crazy, but I think I became a much better writer. Even though I wasn't at Amazon more than 2 years, I still think hard about distilling the important information down when I'm writing something like an email to somebody or putting up a code review. I'm thinking a lot more about what is the minimum information I need to convey to somebody so that they can quickly look at it, quickly understand it, and so that we can help each other move quickly on this particular code review or design document or anything like that. I think that emphasis on writing skills was actually super helpful for me, and especially now that I'm in a PhD program where there's a lot of writing required. And then there's the most valuable lesson I've learned about software, and this one is a little bit bittersweet. Our team had so many operational issues, and our on-call could get pretty hectic just with the number of pages we were getting, sometimes in the middle of the night. And so one thing I started doing with my code was thinking very critically about what my code needs to be readable and understandable, such that if I get paged at 2 o'clock in the morning and I'm sleep deprived and sitting at my computer trying to figure out what went wrong, I have log statements to go off of. Do I have metrics to go off of? Can I easily understand what has gone wrong with my code when I'm in this sleep deprived state from an alarm in the middle of the night? That's a really useful skill right there. And I've noticed now that I'm always putting in log statements, trying to use good informative log statements, logging variables, using metrics to help me understand the system's performance. And I'm actually really happy that I had that opportunity to learn that stuff at Amazon, because I hadn't done that previously. But it wasn't all good. Our team's relationship with our newly hired manager was not good. In defense of our SDM for the team, he was probably hired onto this team having no awareness of how bad things currently were. And I sometimes got the feeling that the sheer scale of what we were up against was not only unexpected, but also well beyond anything he'd encountered before. So I'm guessing that he was facing a lot of pressure, and that was causing some of the issues that we had downstream. But the biggest one was the inability to listen to the team and what the team is saying, rather than going with his predetermined point of view about what is the right thing or what is the right solution. That was so frustrating, because the team is coming to him and saying, we need to do this thing, we need to prioritize it immediately. It's 2 months of effort, but it's critically important that we do it for this reason. And he's coming back and saying, we're gonna do this instead. It's only gonna be 2 weeks of effort. We'll get the points on the board and it'll all be totally doable. And the team is knowing that it's not going to be totally doable in that time frame, and feeling like they're not being listened to. And that was really frustrating for a lot of people. And so people continued to leave our team. At this point, Amazon's corporate team has decided that we are no longer hiring for a period of time, and we're not backfilling any roles. So we were losing people, but we weren't able to replace them. And our on-call schedule, which is 7 days, 24/7, each person, and we rotate 7 days, 7 days, 7 days. We went from doing that every 8 to 9 weeks to then doing that every 4 to 5 weeks. It was really hard to keep up with, and there's no way to really get on-call coverage when you're down to so few people, because everyone has, things and obligations that they have in life, and it just became really difficult for everyone to keep up with. Everyone was really tired. We became an operations team instead of a development team. And that was a really disappointing experience, given that when I interviewed, the team had told me how much exciting development work we had. And all of that got pushed to the side for operational fixes. And these weren't good operational fixes that were going to be like long-term beneficial to us. They were Band-Aid solutions over and over again. So Amazon has this other thing called customer obsession, which is thinking about the customer and making the product for the customer rather than just making the product because you think it's cool or, something like that. And I really like that. I think that's how you get a good product, is by listening to your customers. And so at the time, it didn't feel like we were really listening to our customers at all. And we're having trouble keeping up with our operations burden, so we aren't bringing in any new features to customers. And on top of that, we're overwhelmed, so we can't actually improve our existing service. And so the whole thing was just a very different experience than I was hoping for. And while I learned a lot from that, it didn't feel like things were going in a good direction or improving. And so I really started to get concerned about that and concerned about what my future on this team was going to look like. Then, on top of all that, the corporate team at Amazon decided that everyone needs to return to the office and be in person multiple days a week. Our organization, our business unit, was blindsided by that, like many were. They had thought that the business unit was going to be responsible for figuring out who they wanted to hire, how they wanted to hire, and how everyone was going to work. Morale really tanked on our team and on others as well after that, and the org leadership tried to apply for exceptions for people, myself included, and all of them were denied. At that point, I was already accepted to CU Boulder, and the office location was in Denver, and these are two different cities in Colorado, so Boulder is actually northwest of Denver. If I were to try to comply with this mandate to be in office and also start graduate school, I would have been driving many, many hours a day back and forth between two different cities, neither of which I lived in order to make that work. And I just knew I wouldn't be able to do a good job at anything if I spread myself that thin. I made the decision to leave Amazon for full-time graduate school. Now, I completely understand the money piece. I actually wondered if I was making the biggest mistake of my life by leaving. Amazon pays a lot, like a lot, especially when compared to other companies in our area. It's life-changing money for people like my husband and I who live, a modest existence. We don't have a lot of big expenses. So when I started to think about leaving the company, I was naturally thinking about whether I'd regret leaving the unvested stock behind, leaving the salary behind. But so far, the only thing I miss is the paycheck. Graduate school, PhD programs, the pay is terrible. It is not something you do for the money. It's something you do because you have this hunger for knowledge and specialization that you can't really satisfy doing anything else. As I've been trying to figure out where to take my career, I often look at different job offerings that are available so that I can kind of use that as guidance. And what I found was that all of the positions I was really interested in were roles that required a high degree of specialization. And many of the candidates who were applying to those roles had their graduate degrees, most of them a PhD. So for me, that further reinforced that this was probably the right time to make this change, because my Amazon experience hadn't gone the way that I had hoped, and I had this opportunity to enter a PhD program and try a different avenue for myself and see what happened. I think people might be curious whether I would work at Amazon again. And yeah, I would try it again. But this time I'd be a lot more insistent on understanding the turnover issues that were going on within the organization I would be joining. I'd request to meet as many of the management and leadership team as possible before joining. I would insist on an on-site interview where I met with the team, and I would want to see what those dynamics were like on the team before I signed an offer. People's experience at Amazon varies wildly. It's a huge company. So much of our individual experience there is determined by our relationships with our direct managers. It's really important to me next time, if I were to interview at Amazon, to have a more honest conversation with the hiring manager about what their future looks like, and just understand their timeline for being at the company and who might be next in the management role if I were to join. Do I regret leaving Amazon? No, not at all. I'm already seeing that my contacts from recruiters on LinkedIn are changing. Instead of getting solicited for roles for the type of work that I did prior, now I'm getting solicited for roles that match my current research experience better. And that's really gratifying. It kind of tells me, okay, I'm heading in the right direction here. I don't regret leaving. I'm happy that I decided to try something else, even if it really hurts my bank account. Hopefully that gives you some insight into how nuanced Amazon can be and how people's experiences can be so different depending on the business unit that they join. I met a lot of really great people when I worked at Amazon, and I don't think you should rule them out as a company. Just make sure to find a good fit and really understand the organization's dynamics, the challenges, and the culture within the organization or the business unit before you sign the offer. All right, I hope that was helpful, and I will see you in another video.